Carla, Sunshine, you ready? Okay.
No, I saw it on Facebook.
Okay, I'd like to call the Saline City Council work meeting to order at 6 p.m. on Monday, October the 4th. Members present this evening are myself, Mayor Marl, Council members C.O. Dillon, Delorco, Camara Sulak, Kraus, and Mayor Pro Tem Dean Gearbaugh. From city staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director Green, and Program Director for Saline Parks and Rec, Sunshine Lambert. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd please sign in the back to my left, and there are copies of the agenda on the back table. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved?
As submitted?
Yes.
Thank you, Councilmember Dillon. Is there a second?
Second, yes.
Seconded by Camara Sulak. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments?
Mary Hess. Over the weekend, there was a comments as far as the rec center, maybe wanting an outside swimming pool or a splash pad or a splash park. And a resident, long-term resident, got on and he said that he felt who was going to pay for this. And I chimed in because years ago, when we first did the rec center, the city residents had a lower membership cost than the township. Then, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, when it was reevaluated, the council decided that the residential costs would be the school district, and anybody outside the school district would have to pay more, even though the taxpayers of Saline is working and financially obligated to the rec center and the bonding. There were comments made, and I made comments, and Mayor, you said something to the effect that I was wrong, plus a couple other unkind things, and I'm not wrong. We do pay more. We pay through the rec center, and we also pay for membership. When it came to possibly having groups, I was hoping maybe the senior center could be considered a group for a lower cost also. And now it is proposing a 6% increase, and I guess that's going to be also for the school district. My Social Security didn't go up, nor did my retirement. And I think that getting double dipped is wrong. I am very, very graciously happy that many council members pointed out that the rec center has problems financially. And I'm glad that we helped it during this COVID. But more membership, of course, you have a free one, that's right. Thank you.
Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items? That was quite a statement. Let me try to respond with some actual facts. First of all, you're done speaking. You had your 3 minutes. Thank you. First of all, the notion that I was unkind or disrespectful is false. There was nothing that was said on Facebook or social media this weekend that was unkind to you or anybody else. I think I've addressed this issue 2-3 dozen times over the past 4 or 5 years. So let me give it one more shot. The 2013 Rec Center Task Force report, it made a series of recommendations to City Council, including extending a discount to those who live in the school district. Your discount as a resident didn't go away. It was just extended to all residents of the school district. Can you control yourself, Mrs. Hess?
Yeah, go for it.
Please be quiet.
Use the podium.
Mrs. Hess, if you continue to interrupt, you're going to be asked to leave. So in conclusion, a discount has been extended to all those within the Saline community. You also get a discount as a senior citizen. And third and finally, if you're a member of the senior center, you also get your membership costs discounted on your membership. So just wanted to state those facts for the record. Those are facts. They're irrefutable. And if people have additional questions, you're welcome to contact my office. We will proceed now, unless there are additional citizen comments. The record will reflect there are none. Then we will proceed to the Rec Center Task Force, the preliminary Rec Center Task Force report. But actually, we're going to begin with City Manager O'Toole, who wants to talk about Rec Center financials for the previous fiscal year. So I'll let you begin, City Manager O'Toole. I'll have a few opening obligatory remarks. I'll also entertain comments from the Rec Center Task Force members, but primarily Director Scruggs and Program Director Sunshine Lambert. So City Manager O'Toole, would you like to begin?
Certainly. So before we begin the conversation, we just wanted to make sure that council had a clear understanding of how we finished out fiscal year 21. So included in your packet, you have what is not the official audit, but basically the reviewed year-end financials for fiscal year 21. As you can see, the rec center did end up losing approximately $500,000, $495,000, $567,000 expenditures in excess of revenue for fiscal year 21. This is on par with what we were expecting. It's actually slightly better considering that they didn't fully deplete their existing fund balance to do it. There was a very nominal amount carried over from fiscal year 21. But this is the justification for the sheets that you see later in the packet that summarize using the federal government calculation standards for calculating lost revenue per ARP funds, the numbers of 446,910 and 791,615 for fiscal years 20 and 21 respectively. So according to federal government standards of accounting, the rec center has lost approximately 1.2 million in revenue due to the pandemic. As we discussed initially during our fiscal year 22 budget conversation, we did set aside I believe $357,525 was the dollar amount earmarked in our fiscal year 22 budget to assign ARP. We could justify expending more than that, but I wanted you all to have a clear picture of what those numbers were before we began the conversation. Do we have Treasurer Bennett on? I don't believe so. But if there are any other questions related to the finance, I'm happy to answer them.
Very good. Again, we'll do questions at the end of the presentation this evening. So hold your questions on Rec Center finances. I'm going to turn it over to Director Scruggs, and let me remove my mask here, excuse me. I'm going to turn it over to Director Scruggs in just a moment. As council will recall, the Rec Center Task Force was established probably 3 or 4 months ago now. We've been working, actually been meeting pretty consistently almost every other week on Thursday evenings at the Rec Center. As the memo to City Council indicated, I do not suspect the group will wrap up and conclude their work until the end of the first quarter 2022. So I want to be very clear that the report and memo that is in front of you this evening is a preliminary report. The bulk of our recommendations and work will be provided to you likely in late February or early March based on our current trajectory. When I yield the floor to Director Scruggs, I'll let her introduce the other members of the task force. I do want to make clear, as my colleagues know, that the preliminary recommendations are, it is an enumerated action item on tonight's regular agenda. It's agenda item 21-194. It is my goal that we act tonight. However, if folks still have outstanding questions or concerns or would like to speak further to either myself, who I serve as the chair of the Rec Center Task Force, staff, or any other member, and we wanted to postpone action until 2 weeks from now, I don't view that as particularly problematic. But since we are proposing an adjustment in membership fees, we would like to have ample time to promote and advertise those prior to the beginning of the next calendar year. Which is when they would go into effect January 1 of 2022. At the conclusion of Ms. Scruggs and Ms. Lambert's remarks, if any member of the Rec Center Task Force, we have 2 citizens with us this evening who serve on the task force, or if Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, as the council liaison to the group, would like to make comment, Chair would be happy to entertain those, and then we'll do a round robin at the dais and address your concerns either to the finances of the rec center or to the preliminary recommendations that are before you tonight. With that, Director Scruggs, can I turn it over to you, and if you would begin by introducing the members of the task force, and then you can dive into your memo.
Certainly. Can we get the screen down, please?
And while that's being done, Ben, perhaps you can help me. My understanding is because Facebook's down, we're live streaming on YouTube tonight. Okay, so just for the public's edification and benefit, we are on YouTube tonight, and I think we'll be on YouTube for the regular meeting as well. Is that correct? Okay, very good. Sorry about that, Director Scruggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce everyone that has been serving on this Recreation Task Force. Besides the mayor, we have Mayor Pro Tem Dean Gearbaugh, City Manager Colleen O'Toole, myself, Recreation Supervisor, or actually Recreation Manager, sorry, Sunshine Lambert. Community members, Jody Humphreys, she was unable to be here this evening, but she brings a wealth of knowledge regarding marketing and programming. And Paul Heineck, who is a former school board member, community leader, and Greg Hohenberger. He actually was a longtime employee a long time ago, and also more recently, he was came back as a part-time employee trainer and is the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Canton. So.
Township of Canton.
Township, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Canton Township, Leisure Services. So that is our group. We've been meeting for over 6 months. We started in March, bi-weekly meetings. And actually, can we get that up on the screen? No? Sorry, we have a PowerPoint.
Well, we've got some technical issues right now because I'm not seeing it, not seeing your PowerPoint on any of the television screens either. So
Okay.
give us a second.
Okay, no problem. I don't think that's on.
It's on.
Oh, that is?
Yep, there's a light on anyways.
It's not working for some reason. So we'll try doing this.
We can, we'll just continue and try to make this work. Oh, there you go. Yeah, thank you. All right, let me try to find out where I was.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't move that anymore. I'm going to use mine. Sorry about that, folks. So, as I mentioned, the Rec Task Force has been meeting since March, bi-weekly meetings. And we initially established 2 goals. The first goal was to improve the financial condition of the rec center operations as we're recovering from the setbacks caused by COVID-19. That's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is to plan for the future of the rec center as we look ahead for the next 10 to 20 years. Goal number 1 was our main focus this past 6 months. And in summary, and I included that in my memorandum that you should have received, but what we've been really working on is to recover our membership base. We had a lot of people leave. We were closed for six months. Everyone's membership was put on a freeze hold. And our goal since we reopened last September was to recover those members and to get those people back. We've been using our public relations generalist, Massey, to promote the rec center memberships, programs, classes on all of our social media platforms. We planned a 30-year anniversary celebration for the rec center, commemorating our 30 years of operation, and that was June 19th. And we introduced the Tom or TJ Johnston Scholarship Fund to assist those in need of financial assistance for swim lessons or any other youth programming. We initiated a swim lane sponsorship program for the Aquatic Center capital improvements. We've been doing a lot of research and study on membership fees, building hours, overall operational trends that impact the recreation facilities within our region. We addressed the critical staff shortage and identified ways to recruit and attract part-time employees. In addition, we developed some ideas for customer service improvements, and all while we're still meeting the health and wellness and recreational needs of our community. Membership trends, I know this is not in the memo that you received, but we gave a snapshot from pre-pandemic, which was 2018 and 19, to when the pandemic struck in March of 2020, to our post-pandemic, which we reopened in September, to the first 3 months of this fiscal year. And the membership trends, do you all have the did it come through?
Yes, they should have it.
Okay, so we're on page 4 then.
If I may, Carla, Ben and I can communicate this to Sarah or Chris, but in the event that we can't get the slideshow up on the screen tonight, we'll make sure to disseminate that for public viewing via Facebook and the web tomorrow. Okay. Please continue, Director Scruggs. My
Sure.
apologies.
Can I try one thing here? The laptop's frozen, sorry about that. Anyway, so pre-pandemic, we were, if you look at the graphs on page 5, you can see where we were, which is the blue line, or the blue bar. It shows where we, how our memberships trended. Then during the pandemic year, that first, up until March, we were actually doing better than we were the year before. We were really kind of reaching our numbers. And then March hit and we essentially bottomed out. Then you can see during our pandemic, we were very low in our membership sales. We had some people that were taking online virtual classes, so they were renewing memberships. Some people wanted to support us, so they would just renew their membership and pay all along. But then, as you notice, in September, we reopened, but everyone was still on a membership freeze for 6 months. We extended everyone's membership. So the numbers that you're seeing, as we were growing a little bit during that time, was for new memberships or those that were expiring and needed to sign back up. And then I think I'd just like to draw your attention to the first 3 months of this fiscal year. It's the yellow line. We're back a little bit less than pre-pandemic numbers, but we're in that mix right now. We're ahead of where I thought we would be at this time, but you can see that we're not that far off from where we were before the pandemic hit. So I think that's something really good to look forward to. With that in mind, supply chain has depleted. Costs of operations have gone up, paper supplies in particular, even chemical supplies. I mean, you name it, everything is on the up. And part of our facility group that I know Greg is involved in and several other recreation centers, I've alluded to this in the past, we've been meeting every 2 weeks since April of 2020. And we are very, actively talking about what everyone is experiencing, what are people doing, membership fees and things like that. And because of our cost of operations going up, and we haven't raised our rates for 3 years or 4 years now, we felt like this was the time that we should reevaluate that. And on slide number 6, you can see the recommendation, we evaluated all sorts of different percentages, from 4 to 10%, and we came up with a 6% recommendation, and then continuing on for the next 5 years, a 1.5% increase beyond this year. And you can see the rates in that, is it page 6? You can see the rates that are proposed there. Our most popular membership package that we sell is our resident individual, and if you just take that, our current rate is $310 for the year, and that would boost it up to $339, so a $20 increase. And then we took all of the different packages that we have and put that together, so you can take a snapshot look at that. On page 7, that would show what that increase would be. If we're using a lower we're using a pre-pandemic or a non-pre-pandemic number for our what we think we're going to bring in this year, which is 530,000 for memberships. And with a 6% increase, that would beef up our membership by $31,800. And then we put together what 1.5% for the next 5 years would mean. And over that 6-year period, we would be looking at $313,762, or $62. In addition to our membership increases.
It might be coming back up here.
Okay.
You can continue
Yeah,
with your
sure.
presentation. Just for Ben's edification, what page are you on of the PowerPoint?
I'm on page 8.
8,
But
okay.
that would be handled here, and this is still
Frozen?
frozen.
Okay, all right. Please continue. I apologize for
Sure.
interrupting.
That's all right. We also talked about offering some slight changes for our customers. So, for example, this might be a better thing. In 2013, we initiated a couples membership. And one thing that has come out of our discussions with all of our other facilities is people are moving from a couples membership, which would mean 2 adults in the same household, to a dual membership, which might mean 2 people in that same household. So it could be a parent and a child, 2, teenage kids, a teenage kid and a younger child or whatnot. But that would be, we would want to switch it from a couples membership to a dual membership, and just defining the 2 people as living in the same household regardless of the age. And then also allow monthly members to upgrade to an annual membership prior to their expiration just by paying that difference. And then they would keep that same original sign-up date for that. But we would be able to, give them that option. Hey, if you liked it during this month, before you expire, if you want to upgrade to an annual, you can by all means do that. The other thing that we've been discussing and we're recommending are hours of operation. So when the pre-pandemic, we were operating Monday through Friday, 5:30 until 10 p.m., and then Saturday and Sunday, 6 to 6. When we reopened in September, we had reduced hours to help save, well, number one, we didn't have staffing. We had to rehire people that were laid off, and it was very difficult to get people to come back in. But our hours are 5:30 in the morning until 8 p.m., Monday through Friday. Saturday, 6 until 4 p.m., and then Sunday we've been closed. And what we're recommending doing, and this is all tied into our staff wages and membership fee increases and things like that, but we would like to have hours starting in November, 5:30 in the morning until 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, 6 to 6 on Saturday, 6 until 4 on Sundays. But then we would also like to tie this into summer hours. So every summer, Memorial Day to Labor Day, we'd like to revert back to those, the hours that we're currently keeping. Really, Sundays, once the weather turns nice in Michigan, it's a very slow day at the rec center. And people, after 4 o'clock, it really gets a little bit slower later between 4 and 6. And then also in the evenings during the summer, 8 o'clock is, we're done with most of our tennis lessons and, fitness classes and things like that. And we're not seeing those hardy numbers that we do in the winter time. So we would like to have recommended summer hours. And then the rest of the year, they would be the extended hours. I'm going to pass it over to Sunshine to talk about our employee wages and what's going on with that. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Mayor and council, thanks so much for having us today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our employee crisis, which I think everybody is well aware of. It's a national crisis, it's a statewide crisis, it's a local crisis. And, so not only has the pandemic affected us with our membership, usage and with the facility, but we're struggling with staff right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Looking at pre-pandemic, normally this time of year, we would be looking at about 25 to 30 aquatic staff, for example. Carla and I did a little review, and currently we have 8 lifeguards that are actively working this month. And that's a problem. We're trying to cover over 100 hours of pool time with 8 staff, and these are high school staff. These are maybe some college staff who have other responsibilities. They're not working 40 hours a week. They're maybe trying to pick up 2 shifts so that they can go to school and have their other responsibilities. One of the issues is, as I mentioned, schools also, these youth are involved in sports, maybe church activities, other extracurriculars, family responsibilities, things like that. In addition, looking at our number of applications, that has significantly decreased. So we're not getting the number of applicants coming in, dropping off those applications, submitting them online. And so that's been quite a struggle. With our front desk staff and our building supervisors, these are staff we rely on to open up the building in the morning, to staff our front desk, to be there on the weekends to cover those shifts. Normally, we would have at least 15, and right now we're working with a team of 8. So what's happening is we have full-time staff trying to fill in gaps. We have times where maybe the pool's not open. So this is greatly impacting what we're trying to do. Okay. So this was a big topic of conversation with the task force, and we definitely came to the conclusion, thank you, that it's imperative that we increase our wages to be competitive with other businesses, whether they're other recreational facilities or just businesses throughout Saline. I know any of us can drive down Michigan Ave and you see sign after sign after sign, $13 an hour, $15 an hour. Well, most of our wages have been minimum wage, maybe slightly thereafter. So it's imperative that we look at those wages, increase them so that we can be competitive. And in doing so, when we went through this analysis, we identified that there's really 2 different types of part-time staff. One group of staff, they're operational. So those are the staff that keep the building open, our building supervisors, our receptionists, our lifeguards. They're not necessarily tied into a specific program. They're just more for the facility itself. That other group is that program staff. So those are those staff that directly run a program or teach a class. So those, for example, would be our summer camp staff, our swim instructors. And so we have those 2 groups. So the next slide, as we move along, let me jump down on mine. We're going to take a little look at the operational staff. Again, those are those positions that keep our building open. And if you look at this graph, I know it makes a lot of sense in my head, but I'm sure if you look at it for the first time, it takes a little getting used to. We took a look at what our hours, so what our budgeted hours for this current fiscal year were for each position, what our budgeted pay rate was, okay? And then looking at what that total cost of that employee. So looking at building supervisors, for example, we have budgeted, 3,600 hours for them at $10 an hour, so a total of just over $36,000. We met and took a look at, one of the topics of conversation was minimum wage. Minimum wage it was projected every year to have an increase. It's been put on hold through the state of Michigan. But we looked at those positions as related to minimum wage, and we decided the best way to do it so that we could be relevant when those adjustments come forward is that we would take that position and look at what the minimum above minimum wage should be, and then what that maximum range is. So a building supervisor, we decided should start at the lowest would be 85 cents over minimum wage, and at the highest would be $5.35. Now, we didn't just pull these numbers out of the air. We talked to a lot of different recreational agencies to get ideas. We contacted Greg to see how much they're paying in Canton, Saline Community Education, others, Parks and Rec departments. The last two columns of this graph show the mid-range. So we took that mid-range and, so if we have a mix of new employees versus, highly qualified employees, that mid-range for building supervisor would be $12.75, and we carried that across. If we look at those increases in pay wages and we carry it all the way down, for operational staff, we're looking at just under $30,000 of an impact for moving forward for any given fiscal year, if that makes sense. So then we'll go down to the next one, which is our program staff, and essentially it's the same math. We looked at position by position and determined, what the standard pay is, and came up with those ranges so that, again, we could, somebody comes to us, it's their first time having a job, they're obviously going to be on that lower end. But if somebody comes to us, they've been a camp director elsewhere for the past 2 years, they've had the experience, we want to be able to be competitive and pay them accordingly. That impact we looked at is about 13,000. What's interesting about that is that's really tied into our program. So as we do our budgets every year, we take a look at what those fees are going to be, and then we adjust those accordingly to make sure we're covering the staff costs and all the other expenses. In addition to wages, we need to provide other incentives to attract part-time employees. I believe one of our best ways to do that is by word of mouth. We've been successful over the years. We'll often ask our current employees if they have any friends, maybe a younger sibling, coming up the line. We've been very fortunate to have some very good families, with siblings who have worked for us over the years. But we wanted to, I think, give a bonus, give an incentive for referring somebody to come work for us. So we decided that it'd be in the best interest if, for any city employee. So if you work at DPW and maybe you know somebody who would be great as a camp counselor this summer, if you refer them and they work 100 hours, then you get a $100 bonus. Another incentive we were looking at is making sure that all of our part-time employees have free access to the rec center. If they're using the facility, if they're taking classes, that's going to provide great customer service. They're going to be knowledgeable. People are going to see them using it, and it really does benefit us. And it's an easy benefit for them that we can provide. And then finally, to retain staff. Because once we get them, that's great, but we want to retain them. So new hires, we're looking at providing a 25-cent increase per hour once they complete the 240 hours within a 6-month period. So they do need to work. We don't want to hire somebody, and then they're only working 2 hours a week. So what we looked at is, what we're asking is about 10 hours on average a week working for us, and if you do, then you would be eligible for that 25-cent increase. I think that's it. I'll turn this back over to Director Scruggs.
Thank you, Sunshine.
Thank you, Sunshine. The other model that we were looking at as the rec task force was discussing things is a full-time staff. So for example, historically, the Parks and Recreation Director and the Recreation Manager, which is my position, Sunshine's, have been paid out directly through the rec center budget. And as we were talking and discussing, we really did talk about what our duties are, and I would agree that a minimum of half of what our duties are not even related to the rec center. They're doing community programs, which is not directly rec center focused, but it's more community-based. Grant writing, I have a whole list of other things that we're doing, you know, Rec on the Go and Youth Council, Parks Commission, you name it. So we would like to recommend that half of those salaries are paid out through the general fund as a recommendation. And on page 17, slide 17, basically a summary, and then we can get into some questions
Great.
or additional comments if Greg or Paul would like to say anything. But what we're requesting City Council to approve, whether it's this evening or possibly next in the next couple of weeks, is to increase that membership fee by 6% effective January 1, with a 1.5% increase for the following 5 years. The reason we're asking so early and why we really are anxious to get this settled is so that we can use this time to help advertise and promote and try to generate a lot of interest leading into that new year. Also, changing our couples membership to a dual membership. This would be a policy change in our membership rules and regulations. Upgrading the monthly membership to an annual, and that would be effective January 1 as well. Those things are all tied into that January 1 date. Adjusting the building hours, we are requesting that be effective November 1. As we're moving in, you know, after it's starting to get a little bit chillier outside, more people do start to come in to use the facility. And we are going to have a demand for people wanting to use Sundays. And we just need to kind of get back to a new normal as we get into our more busy season. And then also looking at our full-time employee funding model. Those would be the things that we're asking City Council to consider. And next steps, as we conclude here, we're going to be meeting again, starting, I'm not sure when, we're going to decide that very soon, but focusing on our second part of the task force, which is planning for the future of the rec center as we look ahead for the next 10 to 20 years, reviewing the 2019, all of the public surveys that we had quite a few input sessions. We have a lot of information regarding what the community is desiring and good suggestions. And developing those funding, the creative funding models for capital improvement projects to study and evaluate the idea of a millage for recreation operations and capital projects. And then, as the mayor alluded, our intention is to complete our meeting and be able to report back to City Council by the end of the second quarter.
Is it second quarter?
Second quarter, yes, of this fiscal year.
I'm going to aim tentatively for March right now. That's my goal.
Okay, all right, March. But for sure, I would like to just take the opportunity to thank our community members, Greg and Paul and Jody, and our council for sure, and definitely Sunshine. Sunshine's been a huge asset. She's really done a lot putting all of this together and has excellent ideas. So.
We also don't want to forget the city manager.
And city manager, of course not.
Who's provided invaluable insight throughout the process.
Definitely.
I know you
Yes,
didn't
I'm
leave her
sorry.
out intentionally.
No,
I want to jump in there.
not intentional at all.
Thank you for the
So
very,
that-
thank you for the very thorough presentation, Director Scruggs.
Yes,
Sunshine, appreciate it. Let me begin, Mr. Gearbaugh, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, as one of the council liaisons to the Rec Center Task Force, anything you would like to add before we open it up for questions?
No, I think both Sunshine and Ms. Scruggs have answered the ideas that we came forward and looked at. And normally what it is, it's a concern is revenue, handling our staffing, marketing, aligning our costs properly, and really addressing some of the support that could come from other sources, especially the CARES millage or other millage activities that could happen in the future. So I think those will be things that we'll be talking further, but what she's identified tonight, I think are things that need to be implemented as soon as possible and discussed by council.
Very good. And as Mr. Gearbaugh can confirm, the report in front of you this evening and the recommendations were reviewed multiple times by the full task force, and we did receive sign-off from every task force member. So these recommendations are unanimous from the group. Mr. Gearbaugh, thank you. Greg, Paul, anything you'd like to add for the record? Want to come up to the podium, Paul, just so we can, well, just so that council and those members of the public who are watching at home can hear you?
I would just like to make a quick comment that this is just one prong in a multi-prong activity that we're undergoing. So membership fees will not solve the issue entirely. So we're looking at a lot of things that will tie in with the health task force in trying to get city synergy going. So we will, in the next 6 months, be doing a lot of work. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Paul. Greg, anything you'd like to add? And thank you both for being here, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you all for the opportunity to participate in this and contribute back a little bit. I've certainly appreciated all my time that I've been in Saline as an employee and a resident, and the opportunity to work with these fine folks. They've done a great job. I'd just like to point out a couple things that came up a little bit earlier about the cost of the rec center and how much general fund dollars and those sorts of things. And just since I happen to be in the field, I'm a little more sensitive to these types of things. The national average, according to NRPA for a Parks and Rec agency, is that 23% of your revenue comes from operating fees. The rest comes from taxes or other subsidy or other locations. So I think looking at the Saline Rec Center budget, it's less than 10%, probably closer to 5% that's coming from general fund. Last I looked into that, and I know in Canton Township, and the director there, our rec center is about 50% supported by tax dollars, and it's a much larger budget than here. So I think the staff at the rec center is doing a fantastic job of being extremely conservative with those things. So happy to answer any questions or support in any way.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Hang tight, because there may be some questions that are best addressed by you or Paul. The only thing I want to add before we open up for questions is the other benefit of taking action either this week or next week on membership fees is it allows our existing members or new members to lock in the membership rates for 2021 if they are so inclined to purchase a membership now or renew. So there's an added incentive in the next 2 to 3 months to purchase a membership. And of course, as Director Scruggs said, we want to provide our members and patrons ample opportunity to adjust and plan accordingly, considering that we're recommending an increase of approximately 6%. City Manager O'Toole, anything you'd like to add before we open up for questions? We are going to be a little pressed for time. I believe at the last council work meeting, I started with Councilmember Kraus, so I'm going to start at the other end of the dais and begin with Mr. Del Orco. I'm going to be monitoring the time, so I'm going to give you about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we'll rotate to Councilmember Dillon and end with Councilmember Kraus.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. So I mainly have some concerns or questions about how we're evaluating the wage increases and where we're drawing these numbers from. You mentioned that you consulted with surrounding municipalities and other areas to figure out where we were in terms of being competitive, which begs the question for me, have we historically been paying disproportionately low wages as compared to other municipalities in the past, or is this simply a function of everyone raising wages to recruit applicants in the face of the pandemic?
Two things. One, SAGE actually had quite a bit of input on the part-time salary wages. They did, along with the full-time compensation study, they did that for our part-time as well. Mm-hmm. And then also, we do compare ourselves to other facilities in, all across Michigan, especially in our southeast Michigan, trying to figure out what other people are paying. Lifeguards are a hot commodity. We have to be able to be competitive with the Ann Arbor YMCA, Canton Township. I mean, anyone from this area, they will travel. If Canton is paying, $2 an hour more than what we're paying, they're going to go there.
Right.
So we do a local comparison as well.
Okay, well,
And then the other part of your question, did we historically, we're trying to pay for our operations through our memberships and all of our leagues and classes, all of our operations. And we've had to pay lower compared to a lot of other places because we are not funded through any type of millage or tax dollars.
okay, so it's currently the case, though, that I think someone just stated that 23% of your operating budget comes from the membership fees?
No.
No, did I have that wrong? Okay.
Yeah, that's what Canton, actually, the NRPA, our National Parks and Recreation Association, that's their national standard. So 23% of fees of the operation comes through your memberships and leagues and classes, et cetera.
So you're maintaining that our membership fees here in Saline don't address the expenses for paying staff, even part-time staff?
We're trying to operate using less than 5% of any type of tax dollar to operate our facility.
That's important to be aware of. Okay. And my next question is for the city manager. We approved a $357,000 loan from the general fund, and that is slated to be paid back by the ARP funds. Can you remind me what we received from the state with the American Energy?
Sure. So the way we ended up structuring it was not actually a general fund loan. We just decided we would use ARP funds for revenue loss. So there's not a transfer between, there's not a transfer between the two funds. But we received $488,957.59 this year. We'll receive that same amount next year. So roughly 60,000 total over 2 years.
And we're looking to address a
$2 million
$1.2
gap.
deficit in the rec center budget? All right, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. DeLorco. You have an opportunity to ask us some additional questions during our regular meeting. Councilmember Dillon, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. The 6% increase, it's admirable, but it's nominal in the bigger picture. And so now if you're talking about the salary increases, it's pretty much a complete offset. And so I feel like we need to take that sort of out of the equation because we're getting back to a net zero. And I do have concerns, ongoing concerns, about the funding sources and whether the city needs to kind of take a step back, pause, and restructure how we want to fund the rec center, whether that is a millage, whether that's general fund dollars. What I'm afraid of is that we're putting in these ARP dollars right now. They're not going to last forever. And it's not really bringing us to where we need to be. So I understand that you're going to have a plan in place next year, but is that going to be soon enough to fill that gap? Like, I'm just afraid that we're going to have a perpetual shortfall. And so I'm trying to figure out what we can do to transition this at this point. And that's something that I think we just have to have a budget discussion about, because budget adjustments right now, when we're talking about taking 50% salaries and taking them out of general fund, well, that's not a budgeted item, so what are we going to forego on that end? So I don't want to play a shell game, and so I want to be very thoughtful in what we're going to do and make sure that it's not a quick stopgap.
City Manager O'Toole, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. I think the task force would agree with you completely. The measures that we prepared today are in front of council specifically because we felt they were time sensitive. The need to raise membership revenues to meet current demand on part-time wages and inflationary trends is something that we need to have a solution for just to maintain the status quo. We are in a fortunate position where we can use ARP funds to bridge the gap to an ultimate solution. But this is not the final solution today. This is this is an opportunity for us to stabilize the rec center so that we continue having that conversation another day, in my opinion.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we are going to continue that conversation, and I just don't want to see it in the sense of just budget adjustments.
Yeah.
I would like to see a long-term plan come forth. I wanted to touch base just quickly on hours of operation, which, have you polled your members? Do you have data that shows usage trends to justify those?
We have our usage trends from pre-pandemic. To know that I had mentioned that from 9 to 10 o'clock in the evening, this probably one of the slowest times of the day. And then Sundays, typically in the summers you can count on your fingers how many people, there's not a lot of money transaction that day, very limited usage. So we do have all of those, I'm sorry. We do have all of those, that information. I don't know if that's where.
No, I appreciate that. So in the sense of time, I'll just pause there and yield the floor to Mr. Seal.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Seal, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to say thank you to everybody involved for all the hard work you've done. I was pleased to read through all of this. There's a lot to digest, but I think it's a good first step, and keep up the good work. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Kamir Sulak.
Yes, I'll say real quickly, Mr. Seal took most of the words out of my mouth. It's obvious that a lot of work went into this. The PowerPoint presentation was very thorough. I don't envy this task that you've had to work on and all the overtime. But I think this is a good first step, and that we should keep talking about it once we get things stabilized. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Kraus.
Thank you. I'll start by saying I'm super appreciative. You have been really good through the pandemic, trying to think of out-of-the-box ways to keep things moving. Definitely not sitting around waiting for luck to come to you, so that's appreciated. In my day job, when I do financial projections out 10 years with federal government money, we always try to look at where that crux will be, where it starts to all fall away and fall down. And so in looking at this, if I'm reading it right, 7 years out, or in 2027, the revenue from the membership would be about $605,000 or something, and base difference of $855 pre-pandemic, that's still a $250,000 difference. So like Ms. Dillon and other council members, that worries me. And just from what I see in my day jobs, there's still not a point where we can see it becoming stable on its own. So definitely more conversations need to be had. So that's in the back of my brain. I do like what Mr. Hynek said about kind of being, having the healthcare task force combine or maybe partner. There was one focus group we had that was especially geared towards mental health, some of the residents, and a lot of it had to do with getting out, getting movement, not necessarily medical. Obviously, the rec center cannot replace a hospital or a 24-hour urgent care, but I wonder if we're doing all we can to tap into some of that. So I would, and Mr. Hynek and I have been trying to connect to talk more about it, but I would like to see what we can do with that to try to get more membership, and just thinking out loud. So that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Kraus. Director Scruggs, Ms. Lambert, anything you want to add before we wrap up this evening? And of course, I know at least Carla, you'll be sticking around for the regular meeting. Okay. Let me say two things. I think that Councilmember Kraus's suggestion about perhaps doing a future meeting that included both the Rec Center Task Force and the Healthcare Improvement Task Force would be worthwhile as we look to develop a long-term vision for our facility. And maybe the vision expands from just being a recreation complex to being a health and wellness facility. I'm not beholden to that, of course, but I think it ought to be explored and evaluated further. I would note, for the public's benefit and for council's benefit, I believe the Rec Center Task Force has another meeting scheduled for this Thursday at 6 p.m. Is that correct?
I did not know that. I mean, I haven't looked at my calendar.
It is scheduled.
Yeah, okay. The reason I bring that up is if there are members of the public or council who would like to attend or participate in those meetings, they are public, and we would welcome your participation. And as a general rule, and you can confirm with myself or Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, we had been meeting every other week. So it's every other Thursday at 6 p.m. in the Cabana at the Rec Center is our current meeting location. But I will definitely double back with you, Councilmember Kraus, as the chair of the Healthcare Improvement Task Force, to talk about a future joint meeting between the two entities, because I think that would be worthwhile. With that, we will conclude the meeting. Again, you'll have an opportunity to address additional concerns or questions under new business during the regular meeting, and we will reconvene into regular session at promptly at 7 p.m. With that, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn this work meeting at 6:56 p.m.
So moved?
Moved by Kraus. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of adjourning say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We do have a revised agenda in front of us this evening, but I'll start with attendance. At the dais this evening are myself, Mayor Marl, Council members Seo, Dillon, Delorco, Kamara Sulak, Kraus, and Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh. From city staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director Green, Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, DPW Director Searles, and I believe City Engineer Fordyce is with us remotely. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, we welcome you. We encourage you to sign in on the back. You may also pick up copies of the agenda on the back table. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are additional amendments.
Motion to approve.
Was that by Kamara Sulak?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And Seo, were you the second?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time or make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. I'll begin with those in the chambers this evening. Is there anyone who would like to make comment on an enumerated agenda item? The record will reflect there are none. Then I will defer to the city clerk. Clerk Royal, I believe we received at least one communique in advance of tonight's meeting. Yes, we have 7. Okay. And I'll keep time here, Terry, so just read the messages, and we'll see how many we get through in the 3 minutes.
Okay. This one is from Library Director Mary Ellen Mulcrum. She says, "Thank you, Mayor Marl and council members, for presenting a proclamation in recognition of National Friends of Libraries Week, which is October 17th through the 23rd. I'd also like to thank the Friends of Saline District Library for all that they do to help the library and, in turn, the community. Our friends have been serving this community for more than 50 years. The Friends' most obvious work is running the corner bookshop inside the library, but much of their work is done behind the scenes, sorting through all the donations received and maintaining a very nice selection of materials in the shop. While the pandemic temporarily forced the closure of the physical bookshop, our Friends worked even harder to maintain an online bookshop for the community and raised a significant amount of money to provide funds for the library programs and services. Money raised by the Friends is used to benefit the library in many ways, such as providing support for the annual summer reading program and the ongoing Books for Babies program, purchasing equipment and furnishings supporting the collection with funds for electronic materials and the Lucky Day collections, beautifying the library gardens, and more. The Friends also help in a variety of other ways. They volunteer at special programs, and they represent and advocate for the library and community events. In short, Saline District Library needs its Friends, and we sincerely thank them for all they do. We also welcome others to learn more and join the Friends of Library District Library.
Very good. Thank you. Would you like to read the next communique?
This one is from Janet Drummond.
And I'm sorry, Clerk Roy, would you mind pulling that microphone just a little bit closer to you? I want to make sure the audience and those at home can hear.
This one is from Janet Drummond. I am a current resident of Haywood Heights. My condo overlooks Saline Mill Pond. I was born and raised in this area and have been living in Arizona for 20 years. I returned home to this area and specifically to Saline because of the beautiful Saline River and Mill Pond Dam that I fondly remember loving before I moved away 20 years ago. I intentionally purchased this condominium here in Saline because of the setting on Mill Pond and the river view. It would be more than just tragic to remove the dam and all that it has become to me to this lovely place. The dam, the pond, and the river, just as it is an icon that sets Saline apart from surrounding areas and means a great deal to the community and to the homeowners. We would implore the city to not take this kind of destructive and devastating action to preserve this beautiful and meaningful and historic water architecture. Thank you, Janet.
Very good. Appreciate those comments. Would you like to read the next email?
And the last one is from Glenna Lilly, and it says, City Council members, Mayor Morrow, and Ms. O'Toole. My comments are in regard to your discussions regarding possible demolition of the dam and the mill pond as well. The city ignored monitoring and inspection for 10 years. Now they are discussing the option to demo it to improve the situation. How it is improved, I do not understand. The water plant is being maintained as it goes along to afford it. The dam could carry on with repairs as needed if the city keeps inspections updated. The best natural asset in Saline is Mill Pond. It is part of the Norman Rockwell experience for the city. Then all of us with homes built on it will be greatly impacted. Whitlock condos are just beginning a $55,000 wall retention project for the hillside. This possible loss of pond certainly isn't what we want now.
Very good. Thank you, Clerk Royal. I believe you received one additional communique, if I'm not mistaken.
But it's not on the agenda, so I'll read it at the last one.
Oh, my faux pas. Yes, you're correct. Are there any additional citizen comments? The record will reflect there are none. Then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Move the consent agenda.
To approve, Mr. CO?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Dillon. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 21-188, Saline River Dam. Let's simply begin with a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 28th, 2021 memo from City Engineer Fordyce.
So moved.
Moved by Kraus, and I believe that was seconded by Kamir Sulak.
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Fordyce, may I begin with you, and then at the conclusion of his remarks, City Manager O'Toole, if you'd like to share anything, I think City Council would welcome that. Mr. Fordyce, you may begin when ready, sir. And please speak loudly.
Thank you. So in my memo, I just summarize some of the recent activities that we've taken with the dam, starting with the 2020 inspection, and then some of the follow-up evaluations in terms of the lifting range of the gates, the survey to confirm the elevation of the berms on either side of the spillway, the confirmation of the hydraulic capacity, and then evaluation of it against different precipitation scenarios. The next item suggested in the inspection report was this structural inspection that we have a proposal for tonight. This will look very closely at the condition of the concrete structure of the dam, particularly the point where the two gates are held in place next to the main spillway. And then there's some other concrete along the walls that lead up to the bridge. That'll be inspected. And then we'll get those results and then keep plugging away at these inspections and continue this discussion on, future plans for the dam. And Kevin Wilkes with Spicer, who prepared the proposal, is on the meeting as well.
Very good. Kevin, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Excellent. Well, we welcome you here this evening. Are there any additional remarks that you'd like to share?
No, I'm just here to offer any additional insight. Mr. Fordyce mentioned council might have some questions, so I'm just available to do my best to answer any of your concerns.
Very good. And Kevin, primarily for the public's edification, if this motion is approved tonight, how long will it take to complete the work and submit a subsequent report to City Council?
That was near the end of the letter agreement. We anticipated about 2 to 4 weeks we would get started, probably around 3 weeks after the inspection to wrap up the report and submit our findings.
Okay, so just for the public's benefit, about 2 months, assuming this motion is approved, before the report would be submitted to council and we would have a subsequent discussion. Thank you for that. City Manager O'Toole, is there anything that you'd like to add before we open up for questions?
Just again, for the public's edification, that a decision tonight to approve the structural analysis isn't for or against the dam inherently. This is just one more step to help us better understand the current conditions of the dam and to gather information that will help us in formulating cost opinions of those two options.
Very good. Perfectly stated. That's why we hired you. Thank you for that. Are there questions for either our guests from the Spicer Group, Mr. Fordyce, or the City Manager? Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. This is a question I had asked Mr. Fordyce earlier, and I just wanted to. What was not included in the Spicer's professional services at this time was the underwater dive inspection, and whether that was something we were going to pursue in the future, if it's something that the state may mandate, and if it's something that we should be looking at this time.
Correct. That was not included in the letter agreement that we submitted. It's not a requirement by the state that you perform that at any given interval. Although it's certainly not a bad idea, I would never recommend not doing a underwater dive inspection. So if that is something that you're interested in pursuing, Spicer does not specifically do that in-house. We'd be happy to subcontract and include that in a revised letter agreement or as a change order, if that's what you prefer. Or we could recommend another firm that specializes in that if you'd prefer not to go the subcontractor route.
Thank you.
And there was a dive inspection of the dam performed in 2006 as part of the gate refurbishment.
If I may interrupt, Councilmember Dillon, my apologies. I would suspect there would be no objection from the dais in terms of what I'm about to recommend, but I do think it would be helpful for the Spicer Group to have a conversation with staff, specifically with Mr. Fordyce, about some entities or individuals who could perform that work and subsequently report back to us at a future council meeting. Doesn't mean we'll authorize the work or we want to do it at this time, but I think some additional information would be appropriate. Ms. Dillon, please continue.
Thank you. No, that was how I was going to end it, so I appreciate that.
No,
Thank
easy
you.
enough. Additional questions for either our guest or Mr. Fordyce. Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh.
Just one question regarding, later on in the agenda, we're going to be approving an alarm system for the dam and so forth. I wasn't sure if Spicer was involved in the selection of that system, or should it be at this time, Mr. Fordyce?
They have not been involved in the selection of that particular system. I very briefly shared with them the idea that we were looking at that system, but they have not really had an opportunity or been asked to look at that. I do think there are some advantages in having the dam monitoring system be the same system as all the pump stations and the wellheads that are also being incorporated into that system. It did seem like there may be an opportunity to use a less expensive piece of equipment that could be solar powered, whereas this one seems to require line power. So I think this is what's later in the agenda is a very reasonable piece of equipment, but it has not been fully reviewed by our dam consultants.
Do you feel that would be, do we need to do that or not? I just want to make sure we're coordinating all efforts when we come to the dam to make sure that we don't do something that may be ineffective cost or be a cost for us that we don't need to incur at some point.
I think it would make sense to have Spicer review that and any drawings that that contractor has available to show the location of the equipment they're installing. You know, there is the need for that monitoring equipment is undisputed. You know, that will help with operation of the dam immensely. But you know, with all the potential work that's going on, I think we should be careful about where we locate it and do our best to, you know, put it in a spot that's not going to see significant renovation a year or two down the road.
Okay, we'll talk about that at the next item. Thank you for your opinion. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Additional questions for staff or our guest? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Fordyce. Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Kraus, seconded by Kamara Sulek to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. How about a motion now to approve an award or not to approve the Saline River Dam structural inspection of the Spicer Group in the amount of $9,000?
Move to approve an award.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh to approve an award. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Dillon. Thank you. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? There appears to be none. Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving and awarding, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. We move on now to new business item 21-191, sewer mainline camera. I have a feeling that Mr. Gearbaugh is going to want to amend or modify the motion. So let's just begin with a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 28th, 2021 memo from DPW Director Searles.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Seal to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, was that Kamara Sulek?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Searles, would you, I'm sorry, I didn't notice you in the back. Would you like to offer some obligatory comments to council and to the community?
Good evening, council. We're asking for authorization to purchase a sewer mainline camera that would cover storm sewer and sanitary sewer in the amount of, I'm blind tonight, $95,078.15 from North River Truck and Trailer. We did receive 2 bids, one from Dehaney, We asked for them to give us a more comparable bid, and I don't know if the packet got updated in time, but it went over 100 and, almost 102,000 for their camera, and it was still short about 500 feet of cable. So we're looking at about 1,500 feet of inspection capability, and we're looking to get the camera in place so we can start doing a little bit more on proactive maintenance and less reactive repair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gearbo, was I confused? Was this motion that you wanted to offer some subsequent language, or was it a future motion?
That might have been some different. I don't have anything tonight to
Okay, all right.
change at this point.
All right, my apologies,
But I do have a question about.
Yes, please, go ahead.
You know, when we look at these costs, and this sounds like a significant investment, the advantage of putting money into having our own system and doing this versus hiring an outside company to do an inspection every periodic time we need this or whatever. Did we do a cost analysis based on that, or is this just more of an emergency need that we need to have as a community, and it solves a lot of problems?
I believe that this is part of your frontline asset management. We need to move forward where we can better leverage our capital dollars as far as a maintenance program. I would recommend to this body an inspection in every pipe, 5 to 7 years would be a good best practice. I don't know exactly how the SAW grant was presented, but that, I think the industry has found waiting until a pipe fails is not the best method. I do have an example that came today, and I didn't make copies or send it out. We had a small sinkhole that formed at Mills and Lawson. We excavated down, we were able to see up the pipe from the access point that there was water infiltrating. So we excavated down hoping just to fix a hole before it became a problem. When we got down there, we found out that it was actually a tap, a crack-in tap. Had we had a camera, we would have been able to identify that before we excavated the hole. Subsequent, we had to bury the hole and then come back when we had the right materials to make the repair. That's a day's labor for 3 guys that could have been avoided. In that,
Mr. Searles, if I may, I apologize. Just for the record, the intersection, I think, is Mills and Bennett, as you go
Bennett.
down to Mill Pond Park.
Yes, sir.
I
Sorry.
inspected the hole. I just wanted to clarify that for the record. Please continue. My
And
apologies.
I did grab some photos, if I don't have copies for everyone, but what the photos show, and it's just a picture, because we had a problem that showed itself as a sinkhole, this is the excavation, we see another hole here. It's not leaking yet. It's not creating a sinkhole. But we also notice there's longitudinal cracks on 3 segments of this pipe. With a camera, I can run across the whole pipe and find out what that pipe may need before we're identifying it from a sinkhole. And the best way to maintain the system is to get an inventory of what you have, and that's good asset management. And I do know that we're having some issues based on the I&I report from Tetra Tech of water infiltrating and inflowing into the pipe. The camera is our best tool to prevent that. Rosebud, another example where we can prevent that. We can't find a lot of these problems until it's massive repair dollars.
And just any additional training or anything that we need for our staff to use this, or is it pretty well straightforward?
This purchase actually comes with 2 full days, 16 hours of training, which should be adequate. We'll have the right number of staff present for the training that can then bring back that knowledge to the rest of the crew.
Thank you, I agree. I just want to make sure that we're doing this the best way that meets your needs at this time, so appreciate your information.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Mayor Pro Tem Gearba. Additional questions for staff. Mr. Khmer Sulak, please.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify, so the full length that North River Truck and Trailers is providing of the cable is 1,500 feet?
Yes.
Wow, okay, this really seems like you said, good asset management and best practices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions. Mr. Delarico.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, once you procure the equipment, is there then a systematic process by which you
randomly select various areas of the city to camera to identify the problems in an exhaustive way? Or is it, I guess, how do you know what to look for, right, if there's not a sinkhole?
Well, the very first projects will be those sewer lines that we already do as monthlies, so we can get an idea of why we're having those issues.
Okay.
From there, it really becomes systematic, from A to Z and then back to A.
And then how long do you think something like that would take?
I would say with the resources available, probably a 5 to 7 year rotation, and I think that fits in the industry's best practices.
Okay, all right. And then, of course, this is something that has already been thought about and budgeted for in the capital improvement plan, and it's slightly over budget, and that's really the only reason it's under discussion this evening.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Searles, for answering a lot of my questions earlier. I'm not going to go into most of them because I think Mr. Gearbaugh may have touched upon most of them. The one that I wanted to touch upon is what Mr. Del Orco just talked about, which was the budget. And we had a conversation because you've made an executive decision to forego some other equipment to obtain this. And you felt as though you feel very comfortable in doing that at this point.
Yes, as far as the priorities for equipment this year, that was the lowest priority. We do have a functioning truck that it was going to replace. I spoke with Alex in the motor pool, and he assured me we're going to be able to get through this season relatively, we're going to be covered this season for snow removal equipment. Not every, but almost every purchase we've went for this year has been over budget because shortages in the industry. With the truck replacement, that was our lowest priority.
Thank you. And again, thanks for getting the information to me earlier.
Thank you, Councilmember Dillon. Any additional questions? There appear to be none. Mr. Schultz, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor moved by Seal, second by Camara Sulek to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve the purchase of the subset main sewer camera in the amount of $95,078.15 from North River Truck and Trailer?
Motion to approve.
Oh, boy. I'm going to let Gearbaugh be the mover on that and Camara Sulek be the second. Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? There appears to be none. Then we will vote. All those in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 21-192. This is 2021 Street and Utilities Change Order Number 1. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 29, 2021 memo from City Engineer Fordyce and to approve or not to approve the 2021 Street and Utilities Projects Change Order Number 1 in the amount of $15,836.50.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh to acknowledge and approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by CO. Mr. Fordyce, do you care to comment?
Just real quick, one of the issues that we were intending to correct on Highland was a sanitary sewer that passed physically through a storm sewer. We wanted to correct that situation. When we excavated the area, there was a house sanitary lead that was at an unfortunate position, and it turned out that the pipe coming out of this area was not laid straight. It was kind of all the joints were offset to avoid a large buried boulder. So all of that pipe had to be relayed, and we had to change the pipe material from a round pipe to an elliptical pipe of the same capacity. And then when we got to the other end of that, where the pipe was crooked, that pipe was in very poor condition. So we went ahead and authorized replacement of, I think it was 147 feet of 24-inch storm sewer, just to make a nice, complete, high-quality product there.
Very good. Well, I must say for the record, on the topic of Highland Drive, I got rave reviews from a number of residents about the quality of the work that was done there. So it was desperately needed, as I've stated publicly in the past. But of course, if there are folks who experienced issues with our subcontractor, we would welcome those thoughts because it's good information to have for future reference as we award construction projects in the ensuing years. Are there questions for City Engineer Fordyce? There appear to be none. Thank you. Mr. Gearbaugh, I'm sorry, did you have one? Please.
Jeff, now that we've replaced, and maybe this is for Larry, both Mills and Highland storm drains or storm sewers, the one on Bennett that failed or appears to have a hole in it, how old is that?
Can you look into that and report back and maybe share the information with the
Yeah.
city manager and she can put it in a weekly
Yeah,
communication?
just curious, because I thought at some point we were going to redo Bennett, so I didn't know if that was part of the whole structure at that one. And then the other question, just out of curiosity, what did we do with the boulder? Did it stay there or did we remove it?
I don't specifically know. I assume we moved it because it would have been in the way of the straight alignment.
Sounds like we've left a couple boulders in town when we've been moving things. And sounds like we're fixing those problems from decades ago, so appreciate it.
Yes.
Any additional questions? The record will reflect there are none. Then is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? No. Then there is a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 21-193, West US 12 Sidewalk Final Design Permitting and Bid Administration. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 29th, 2021 memo from City Engineer Fordyce and to approve an award or not to approve the West US 12 Sidewalk Final Design Permitting and Bid Administration Project to Midwestern Consulting in a not-to-exceed amount of $36,000.
So moved.
To acknowledge, to approve, and to award, Mr. Kamir Sulak?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Kraus. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, City Manager O'Toole did provide some supplemental materials in advance of tonight's meeting, and you should have each received one just a few minutes before the regular meeting began. Mr. Fordyce, would you like to begin?
Yeah, first, I think the amount is 36,600. Scrolling through my documents here.
Yes, it is.
Yep,
Yes.
you're correct.
36,600.
Let me deal with that first then. Mr. Kamir Sulak, are you still comfortable moving the motion, noting that the not-to-exceed amount will increase by $600?
Yes, I am comfortable with that.
And Councilmember Kraus?
Yes.
Still good seconding? Okay, very good. Then the motion will be modified without objection. Please proceed, Mr. Fordyce.
Thank you. So Midwestern did a preliminary design for us. They investigated, they did survey work, investigated the right-of-way. We had a discrepancy between two different documents, and we had to work with MDOT to resolve that, so we knew how much right-of-way we had to work with. We've gone through a couple different scenarios in some spots where there are significant trees that we're trying very hard to preserve. And I think that's about it. We're ready to move into final design and work on the final grades. There's some driveways that are kind of, I don't know, recessed, subsided into the ground. So we've got some detailed grading work in order to make our ADA slopes and make everything work. Primary goal in the design is to keep the sidewalk as far from US 12 as we can. There are several spots in the preliminary alignment, and I'm sure it'll end up this way in the final, where we are quite close to US 12, simply because there is not enough right-of-way available to move it further away. So we, I think that's about it, yeah. And Scott Fisher is in the audience there, if we have any questions for him.
Very good. Scott, we welcome you here this evening. Do you care to make any comments at this time?
No comments, just I'm happy to answer any questions.
Why don't you hang tight at the podium there, because I suspect there may be some questions that are best addressed by you. City Manager O'Toole, assuming you have nothing to say at this time? Okay, very good. Well, let me just say first, I don't have any questions. I will be enthusiastically supporting the motion. This does not solve all of the connectivity or walkability issues that we have on the west side of town, but it's an important first step. And as we've established earlier this year during a number of conversations, often as it relates to sidewalks, you have to take first steps, and progress is incremental. So I think this is a really solid plan. I look forward to discussing it more, and again, we'll be supporting the motion in just a few moments when we proceed to voting. With that, are there questions for either our guests from Midwest Consulting or for Mr. Fordyce? I'm going to begin with Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, and then I will jump to Councilmember Kraus.
Just a couple questions. When we do this, are we going to be looking at an alternative plan? Should we need to acquire additional right-of-way in certain areas if we feel that it's not going to be safe? I'd like to have that part of this as not be a afterthought.
So there are parts of the sidewalk that are going to be immediately adjacent to the curb, regardless of what we do. The sidewalk across the bridge is basically a curb walk. And given the slopes of the dam and the guardrails, that situation will extend a little bit further west. We do have, in some of the alternatives, we're potentially seeking a permanent easement so that we can move the sidewalk onto private property in order to preserve trees while we're also keeping it far away from the highway. Given the grades of the areas where right-of-way is fairly limited, I don't think that acquiring additional land will really help us, but it's certainly something we can look at in a little more detail.
Just from the question of making sure, as you just mentioned, permanent easements or whatever, considering that we had concerns with Huntington Woods and who is responsible for maintaining those, I think we need to be extremely careful on how we approach that. But I also want to make sure that whatever we do is promoting the safety, and if it does mean having to lose a tree or two, that is not the deciding factor, because trees can be replanted. Then the other question I had is, we are also looking at an assessment approach for some of this sidewalk.
Yes. So currently, the amount of money we have in the budget is not sufficient for construction. So yes, we're looking at what would be reasonable to assess to the properties, and grant opportunities for sidewalks are very, very slim to none. So I don't know that we'll be able to find any opportunities there. I already discussed the project with the Connecting Communities grant folks, and they said no. Without much consideration, it's just not the kind of project that they seek to fund. So, so yes.
Okay. And do we anticipate any MDOT delays, issues, concerns at this time?
Not right at this time. So Scott and I went up to Brighton and met with MDOT, and they seemed, Scott, if you could jump in and provide your memories, but they seemed to think it was a decent a plan, and didn't really have any concerns with it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kraus.
Thank you. A quick question. This doesn't shut any of the road down or detours. The road will have the normal traffic flow, US 12?
That's the intent. We may have to close down the center left turn lane to maintain two-way traffic, and to give the contractor a bit of room to work. But I don't think MDOT would actually let us close down the road at all, so.
And then more of a statement than a question. The only thing I do support this, but I want to see robust and proactive communication going from the city to the residences. We've had a PR problem. I say it every meeting. It's my thing. I'm going to keep saying it. Maybe meetings to update them as it goes. That alleviates a lot of problems on the back end if we're transparent, proactive, and communicating with those residents.
Yeah, I think if I may, I think in the short term, some information shared online and on social media would be valuable. But I think as we look to the future, at the time when we're securing a contractor, actually assessing properties and scheduling work, I think it would be valuable to have a public open house and send a formal invitation to property owners in this corridor. So I think we should commit to that. I think that's the best practice, and I think it resolves or addresses the concern just articulated by my colleague. Yeah. Anything else, Councilmember Kraus?
No, thank you.
I believe I saw your hand up, Mr. Kamara-Sulek. Was that correct?
Yes, but my questions were answered.
Oh, easy enough. Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Fordyce for answering many of my questions earlier in the day and providing larger maps. I did have a question. I had concern about whether there was going to be a sidewalk built over the berm at the bottom of Austin Drive that would connect to the sidewalk, because that would then provide a fully connecting sidewalk for the residents of Whitlock to access. Because currently, right now, I've said this a long time, that Whitlock does not provide access to busing. And so currently, those students are traversing private property, which most of the time is not cleared, in order to get to Saline River Drive to get a bus. And so I think this will be a great avenue for them. And I did appreciate your question and your answer, rather, on Austin Drive about putting the sidewalk on, okay, I think you say it's the south side. I'm very directionally challenged. It's the side that I would not expect it to be on. and you feel comfortable, will there be several crosswalks or just one up by the church?
There'll be one by the church to connect to their existing sidewalk, and then a crosswalk at Saline River Drive.
Okay. Fantastic. And my only other question was the Ford one-room schoolhouse building. The front of that property is actually a driveway, if I'm not mistaken. So will sidewalk be designated through that driveway?
They have the old Ford School. There are 2 driveways there, and then a long section of fence in between. And that is one of the locations where we have some right-of-way width challenges. So the sidewalk will be a little bit closer than maybe we would want at that location. But yeah, we will rework the drive entrances to have sidewalk through the driveways and then across the frontage there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Mr. Fordyce or our guest from Midwest Consulting? The record will reflect there are none. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion?
Mayor, could I just make one more comment?
Absolutely.
Sorry. Just to address that issue on, reaching out and public engagement, the design budget for this was originally $30,000, but that was kind of estimated probably 3 years ago now. And one of the reasons that this is over that budget is because we did add some tasks for Midwestern to help us with engagement of the property owners and the public in general. Yep. Particularly with the assessment process.
Yep. And I'm thinking, if I may, I'm thinking an open house very similar, although we probably wouldn't need to use as large a venue. I'm thinking very similar to what we did circa 2015, 2016 about the Michigan Avenue makeover, where we had consultants and staff in one large room immediately at the end of the workday, invited people to stop by at their convenience. There wasn't a formal program, but there were ample number of experts on hand to address questions and concerns. Okay. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. If there's nothing further, we will proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Camara Sulak, seconded by Kraus, to acknowledge, approve, and award, noting that the number changed from 36,000 to 36,600. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 21-194, first quarter report from the Rec Center Sustainability Task Force. Because there may be some additional questions and because council may want to postpone formal action until 2 weeks from now, let's start with just a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 29th, 2021 memo from the Rec Center Sustainability Task Force.
So moved.
Yerbaugh will be the mover and Dillon will be the second. Director Scruggs, you provided a very thorough PowerPoint and an excellent presentation earlier this evening. Is there anything that you or Ms. Lambert would like to add at this time? No? Okay. Well, then let's open it up if there are additional questions for staff or for any member of the Rec Center Task Force. So City Manager O'Toole, myself, or Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh may be able to respond to your questions as well. I'll start with Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you. This would probably be for the city manager. Can you provide, prior to our next meeting, what that budget adjustment would look like for the salaries and in the funding sources?
Absolutely. And something to note for the budget and adjustments related to the salary, those technically wouldn't be approved until council amends the fiscal year 22 budget. So you'd be approving recommendations, but you wouldn't formally adopt the change until the budget amendments were approved. We can get those actual figures for you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff, Director Scruggs or Ms. O'Toole? No. Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. And the motion carries unanimously. What's your pleasure? Would you like a motion to approve, not to approve, or postpone formal action until our next meeting, which would be October the 18th, 2021?
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by CO. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Gearbaugh, would you like to begin?
Yeah, a number of these ideas and recommendations are simply some changes in operational aspects, and I think even though they've been brought forward to council, it's good to know we understand what their operations and things are happening. As for the 6% increase, would be nice to have it increased higher, but at this point in time, we need to realize what's going on. I know that Social Security is getting a 6% increase, so kind of consistent with what anticipations are across some of the economic factors that are coming out. One of the things that we discussed is that of 2013, when the last increase, or when we last assessed it, and then we had an increase 4 years ago or whatever it was, we really should have a plan like we're proposing that we should be raising fees either annually or biannually, which adjusts at a reasonable rate so that we are costing for inflation and so forth and those. And as you may remember, in terms of the subsidy for the rec center, we sort of eliminated that when we decided to do the major construction related to the building, when we renovated the outside and put a new front facade on it, fixed all the problems that had it. And that $100,000, which now is just 23,000 or 25, I believe. Those funds really would have been the money that was subsidizing the two positions. We took it away, and as we looked at that and so forth, we really need to realize that we are making the rec center pay for activities that are part of our general fund budget, and we should align it to the proper cost center. And at this point, I think that's a good recommendation, and how we're looking at that is one way of providing the support. I know we're going to have to look at what other areas we're going to have to cut and associate with that in the next budget year, but that's one way of helping relieve some of the concerns we've had, and a realization is that if we're going to have parks, we have to have the individuals covered and pay for the certain areas that they're in. And as for the wage increases, from my perspective, we need to be competitive. We have kept a low wage profile for the rec center for decades, and it was to try and maintain all this and have it keep paying for itself. So there's a lot of recommendations in here I think are just good business practice. And we're going to have the biggest worry about it, our risk, is whether or not we're going to get ourselves back up to the revenue that we had for fees in the past. And then the other one is really understanding, can we continue to subsidize at this level, and then moving into, do we want to have another type of millage? My hope would be is that I have had concerns with the way the CARES millage is designed at this point, and considering that it's coming up for a renewal fairly in a few years, maybe next year, I can't remember this. We really need to talk about how those funds are actually used. I think too much of it's going directly to school operations when this community and this school district has a lot of needs, and we have all the parks and recreational facilities in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gerba. I think that was well stated, and I think your comment about sound business practices is spot on. Let me just add, as the chair of the Rec Center Sustainability Task Force, obviously, I strongly support these recommendations and will be voting in favor of the motion in just a few minutes. I would prefer not to increase membership fees 6%, but it simply must be done. And I think, as Mayor Pro Tem Gerba indicated, locking in annual increases, which are likely less than the rate of inflation, is not only prudent but appropriate at this time. And we also want to give our patrons ample opportunity to make plans and perhaps purchase a new membership in the remaining 3-4 months of 2021 before these new rates go into effect. I do want to state again for the record that what is before you tonight is just a small fraction of what the ultimate report or analysis from the Rec Center Sustainability Task Force will be. These are some stopgap measures to stop the bleeding and to reverse some negative trends, specifically towards being able to recruit and retain talent, which, in order to maintain a viable facility, we need people. But I think, if I had to break it down into percentages, I think this is probably 20% of what you'll ultimately be looking at, and 80% is yet to come. And I think it will take the Rec Center Sustainability Task Force the better part of 4 or 5 months to wrap up their work and develop a grand vision for the next 10 to 15 years, which includes making the rec center more financially viable, attracting more patrons, and making sure it's welcoming to all those in the Saline community. I will also note, and I've said this previously, that the Recovery Act dollars that were spearheaded by President Biden and subsequently approved by the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate, those dollars that are allocated towards municipalities were intended to prop up services within our municipal portfolio that were particularly devastated by COVID-19 and the subsequent shutdown. And as I've stated before, as an organization, we actually weathered that storm pretty well, with the one exception being the rec center, because it had to be shuttered for an extended period of time. So I'm strongly in favor of using a bulk of those dollars and allocating to the rec center, because again, that was the division of our municipal portfolio that was devastated the most by the pandemic. So I think that's the appropriate use of those dollars. With that, I'll yield the floor, but again, like Mr. Gearbaugh, like Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, I strongly support the recommendations and will be voting in the affirmative in just a few minutes. Is there additional comments relating to the motion? Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. At this time, I appreciate what's being said. I appreciate the presentation that was given tonight. And, you know, having children of the age that are looking for part-time employment, I will be honest, you're very conservative in your wages. You're competing with a lot of other places. And I sort of wish you would go back and rethink that a little bit and the incentives that go with it. You know, not necessarily students are going to need rec center, you know, memberships if their family has already won. Financial incentives are huge for these younger people right now. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to find that so that we can retain that part-time employee piece for you. And like I said, I'm just at this time, I don't feel comfortable moving forward. I appreciate and I acknowledge the suggestions that have been brought forth, but until I look at the budget in its totality and see where these dollars are coming from the general fund, and if what we need to adjust, you know, going forward, because this isn't a payback. This is going to be a permanent line item. And so I just want to make sure that there is a placeholder there for it.
Thank you. Any additional comments on the motion? Councilmember Kraus?
I have to say, I agree with Ms. Dillon on this. I'm supportive of the rec center. I think most of these recommendations are fine. But without even having the figures on the 50%, like in my day job, that would never fly. Like, before I vote on something, I have to know what those dollars are. I'm not hung up on just that, though. So I do think that if we could, there's a lot of information given to us tonight on this, and I would like to have a few more weeks to sort through it all, the finance part of it, and also see, like what Ms. Dillon said, I think you could go higher on the wages, and even maybe, don't anybody, you know, get mad at me, but increase the increase. How much do they want the rec center? Are they willing to pay another percentage? I'm just throwing that out there. But I'm not convinced that the numbers are as good as they could be right now. A couple weeks, maybe, that's fine.
So what my recommendation would be is if you want some more time, then just vote no on the motion that's about to be voted on, and then offer a subsequent motion to postpone formal action until a date certain. And I would hope, again, to my comments earlier, that could be the 18th. So if people have additional questions or concerns, certainly understand that. Ask them, meet with whomever is appropriate to meet with, but be of the understanding that the chair's goal would be to develop consensus by the 18th, so our patrons have ample time to act and respond accordingly. Okay? Is there additional discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by, was it Gearbaugh and seconded by CO? Did I have that right, Clerk Royal? Yeah. To approve the recommendations as outlined. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so ayes have it there, and the motion carries 5-2. Thank you very much. And of course, if you still do have questions, I would encourage you to direct them to either Director Scruggs, Ms. Lambert, or myself as the Rec Center Task Force Chair. Be happy to address whatever you have.
I'd like to take it home and sit on it.
Oh, please.
Yeah,
please,
I don't have them right now.
No, I wasn't assuming that you did. Yeah.
Thank
Later
you.
this week or early next week, if you want to sit down, meet over Zoom, Teams, whatever.
Sure.
Be happy to do that. Okay, thank you all. We move on to new business item 21-195. This is 2022 Street and Utility Project, Surveying, Engineering, Design, and Bid Administration. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 29th, 2021 memo from City Engineer Fordyce and to approve an award or not to approve the 2022 Street and Utility Project, Surveying, Engineering, Design, Bid, and Assistance to Midwest Consulting in a not-to-exceed amount of $168,200.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and award.
Moved by CO to acknowledge, approve, and award. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Delorco. Thank you, sir. Mr. Fordyce, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. So the CIP has 5 streets planned for next summer: East McKay, West McKay, North Lewis, Marpool, and Wood Hill. In the process of working with Midwestern to put together a scope of work for the design of those streets and utilities, we came upon some other projects that made an awful lot of sense to include in these, and that includes a small section of Willis at the southern end of Wood Hill, Hall Street, which is in the CIP for, I think, 2024. And then Forest Brook Drive, which would be the last original street in that neighborhood. So,
Which is
including
connected to
those-
Marl Pool too, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. We went ahead and developed the scope of work with those streets in it, and that's the proposal that's before you today. There is still some budgeting work to be done before those streets could be included in the construction project. So going ahead with the design, I think makes a heck of a lot of sense, and we'll assume that the budgeting will catch up. But before we need to go out to bid, I think we can work that out, particularly with Hall Street. Another item that came up during, while Scott and I were reviewing these projects, is some additional improvements to the right-of-way on East McKay. And that was not part of the original scope. So I think this is another good example of the new process we have for acquiring engineering consultants, that it allows, the city engineer to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and bring in their creative ideas early in the process so that those can be included in the design contract. And I think this is just a great example of how this process works really well. In my memo, I did mention that we had applied for a Category B grant. When I was writing my memo, I forgot that MDOT had already reviewed that application and denied that grant. So that will not be a funding source for this.
It's disappointing news, but we appreciate the update. Let me just say, Mr. Fordyce, I don't have any questions for you. Obviously, the streets that were originally outlined for utility work, survey, engineering, design are all appropriate candidates for resurfacing. I'm pleased that we are now including Forest Brook and Willis. That makes sense since we're doing work in the vicinity on Marl Pool and on Wood Hill. I would love to be able to fast track Hall. I've been very candid on my opinions of Hall Street previously. I'm quite frankly embarrassed by the state of that small connecting road between McKay and Michigan Ave. So if we could fast track that and include that in an upcoming construction season, I think that would be marvelous. Thank you for your analysis on this. I'll strongly be supporting the motion. Look forward to future conversations on actually awarding work on these various streets. Questions? I'll begin with Mr. Gearbaugh.
Jeff, can you clarify the 800 feet on North Lewis Street? Is that the portion between Michigan Avenue and Russell?
Correct.
Will that include putting in sidewalk where we have a deficiency of sidewalk?
That, I don't think we talked about that, so on the kind of at the north end on the east side, there's a section there with no sidewalk.
Correct, between McKay and Russell.
And Russell, right. That's a good idea. I think we can include that, no problem.
Any objection to that?
No, just to piggyback, no, we did not discuss that part, but sidewalk is fairly easy to do.
Yeah, I believe that's the only section right now that I know is missing, so that would be great.
Some sidewalks are fairly easy to do. Some are really complicated and take a very long time.
And I know they're close to the homes on that side, but I think we can do it at this point in time. There might be some grading issues at that point.
I think that's the only major deficiency in Saline Heights, with the exception of those stairs in the
on
mid-block
Russell.
of Russell, but that's for a different time, different discussion.
Yeah.
Anything further, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Nope,
No?
that's it.
Let me jump to Councilmember Dillon, and then I'll jump to Mr. Seal.
Thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Fordyce, for answering some questions in advance of the meeting. The one thing that I have a question about still is that we have tied into this project street striping on a couple of streets that we've so desperately been waiting on, which would be East and West Henry and Monroe Streets. And you've indicated that they would be at the very end of the construction cycle. Is there any opportunity to carve that out as a separate project and get that done? Especially with the Huntington Woods sidewalk going in and such, I think it would be very advantageous to get that done.
Yeah, so when Scott and I were discussing this scope and bringing that work into this project, the idea was to have it at the end of construction, along with the limited striping work that would be done on the newly paved streets. But it's quite possible to move that to the front end of the construction cycle, just kind of as a standalone project within a project. I think we might have the advantage of still getting some of the, kind of bulk discount. Or we'd have to talk with Scott and see if this requires any fee adjustments. Perhaps we just bid that as a standalone project to the pavement marking companies. If there's support and interest in getting that done early in the construction season.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Mr. Seal?
Yes, I just want to thank you for finally including the pavement markings on Monroe Street for the parking spaces. That's long been discussed as a traffic calming measure, at least. And because people continue to speed in that segment of Monroe Street from US 12 down to where it begins to go downhill. And then I think they even begin to pick up speed even more once they go there, as shown by that permanent speed radar sign that's there on Monroe Street across from the daycare center. And I might also like to bring up, please, what appears to be an awkward placement of the speed limit sign right there. That speed limit sign for 25 miles an hour is right in front of that speed radar sign, such that the speed radar sign can frequently only be seen once people are already right on top of it, because that blocks the vision. Maybe that speed limit sign can be taken off the post it's on now and placed below the speed radar sign, incorporate both those into the one post. And that way it might be a little easier to see the speed radar sign and eliminate that vision blockage there.
Yeah, I'll talk to Director Searles about evaluating that and see if we can, if there's a reasonable, easy way to relocate that sign.
Just an idea, and I would appreciate somebody looking
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Gerbaugh.
Just one quick question on the parking markings. Are we also including South Harris Street, which I've been asking for almost a decade now?
We don't have a layout or design for South Harris. And is it just the 100 block?
Yeah, in between
you're concerned
Michigan
about?
Avenue and Henry Street.
Yeah. I can take a look at that and see if that's a simple in-house layout, and then we could probably easily add that to this project.
Thank you, because the commercial businesses there have been asking for that for a long time.
Yeah. And I would suspect, Mr. Fordyce, with your expertise and experience, that is something that we could do in-house and we'd also should fast track. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. Any additional questions for city engineer or our guests from Midwest Consulting? Gentlemen, thank you. If there's nothing further, we will proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Del Orco, to acknowledge, to approve, and to award. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Our last action item of the evening is agenda item 21-196, Sensaphone Monitoring Unit Installation. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 28th, 2021 memo from IT Director Schonk and to approve an award or not to approve the proposal for Sensaphone Monitoring Units installation to jet pump and valve in a not-to-exceed amount of $27,090.84.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and award.
Moved by CO to acknowledge, approve, and award. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kamara Sulak. Thank you. Mr. Schonk, you are up, sir.
Good evening. Before you is a memo to upgrade and modernize our alarm systems at many of our primary water assets. So wastewater plant, Southside Lift Station, Arboretum Pump Station, and then also this dam as well. We installed the Sensaphone system that I'm looking at doing at the other sites. We have that in place at the water plant now. It's been working really well. I'd like to expand it to the other sites. That way it's a single pane of glass, as they call it. There's one alerting system. There's not multiple systems that operators have to learn, have to function with. So just looking to get them online and get moving with it. So
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Are there questions for our IT director? Mr. Gerbaugh?
Real quick, with regards to the Mill Pond Dam one, will there be an ability to integrate this with our, whatever else we might put in there that can be done remotely?
Yeah, so the system that we're quoting can take 12 inputs, so up to 12 devices, and then if that's not enough, we can also, they call it like a sidecar, we can add additional if we need to. It'll be a separate unit, but we can, basically, as many sensors as you want, we'll find a way to put them on there.
Okay. I just want to make sure whatever we end up doing, we aren't having to replace it just
Right.
2 or 3 years from now.
Yep, and also with the, with the wastewater plant, with the upgrades, we had that in mind as well, so the system can be expanded if, whatever we need to, we can add. So.
I appreciate you taking the waste treatment task force is encouraging this because of the concerns that we had during the last storm and the power
Right.
failure and the unreliability of Verizon, so I'm glad that this is moving forward.
Right.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Gearbout. Additional questions? Ms. Dillon?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch base, Mr. Schank, on the Verizon cellular connection. So that is using the Verizon system. So should that system be down, is there any sort of a backup plan to it?
So for the wastewater plant, there will be. So the primary connection there is a Comcast connection, so that's going to be the main focus. If that goes down, the cellular will then be the backup to get out. For the other sites, we could add another carrier, so we could add an AT&T SIM card as well. It just adds cost to the monthly, but that's a possibility with the system.
Okay. And we're sure that there's a clear Verizon signal at these particular places? Because I
Yes.
know within the city there are dead spots.
There are, yeah, and we did a site visit at each of these, and they fell within line of acceptable tolerances. So, and then with the wastewater plant, because of the importance, we're going to actually roof mount an antenna to increase that reception as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions for our IT director? Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? There is none. Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Commander Sulak, to acknowledge, to approve, and to award. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is committee, commission, and task force reports from council members. Councilmember Kraus.
Thank you. So the Historic District Commission has their annual walking meeting on 10/14. It's a Thursday night at 5 o'clock. It starts at Ann Arbor, Saline at Pleasant Ridge, and then it ends up, I can't remember, but 5 o'clock to about 6:30, where we walk through the historic district and we do a survey. Public is welcome.
The date again, Councilmember Kraus?
Yep, sure. It's 10/14, which is Thursday, October 14th.
Okay. At what time?
5 to 6:30. And then I also wanted to plug the healthcare task force again. I know I've been talking about it a lot lately, both in meetings and on social media, but we're getting a lot of great feedback. So I want to keep that on the radar. We're about ready to start the second survey that's going to be designed a little more scientifically. And we also, I do want to join up with the rec center and see how, I love the idea of the health wellness and not just rec center. There might be something there, so I want to keep that on the radar as well.
Very good. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yourself as the chair of the task force, the city manager, and I are meeting again with the leadership of IHA to discuss future, opportunities to collaborate and partner and bring additional services to the community. So as soon as there's something tangible to report, I know we'll disseminate.
I don't know how I forgot that one.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
Yes.
Additional committee, commissioner, task force reports. Mr. Commander Sulak.
Yes, thank you. First off, the DEI committee is hosting a virtual coffee hour Thursday, the 14th, from 6:30 to 7:30, so you can piggyback on that. And we're also finishing up our work on bylaws and working on a survey with Saline area schools with their DEILC. Next, the Arts and Culture Committee, working on having an art exhibit in the 109 Exchange, and then educate youth. It's a program with 15 to 20 students from Ypsilanti and 15 to 20 from Saline area schools that will have end up in a demonstration exhibit at the auditorium in the high school. So that's something that we're hoping to get back online this spring. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good.
Oh, wait, one last thing. One last thing. I just want to make note that the DEI committee is for all of us. It's for everybody in the Saline community. And we value all opinions and thoughts by community members. So any input that you have, please feel free to reach out to myself or the DEI task force. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you. Oops, I'm tangled. Hold on. So from the Parks Commission, we have quite a few upcoming events. This Saturday from 10 to 2, there is a fly fishing class, and it's for new, novice, it's for skilled that just want to get back in the water. If you've got your equipment, bring it with you. If you don't, they will have some there to borrow. You can register through salinerec.com, and that will be held at Mill Pond Park. Also continuing is the Outdoor Parks Nature Series, and the next one will be held at Curtis Park on October 21st at 6 p.m. And the theme is nocturnal animals, and you can actually dress up as an animal if you so choose. And there's one in each of the following months. In November, the topic is wild birds at Teft Park, and in December, it's Winter Wonderland hike at Wilderness Park. And again, you can register through salinerec.com. And the other event that's coming up is the yearly Halloween trick-or-treat at the rec center. To be COVID-friendly, it will be an outdoor event again. They are looking for both participants as well as vendors. So please feel free to contact the rec center to register as either. And from the Fireworks Committee, it's finally here. Our fall fireworks will happen next Saturday, the 8th. The fireworks will go off at about 7:30 p.m., but the event will actually open at 4 p.m. There will be music, there will be games courtesy of the rec center, and there will be food trucks along Tebow Drive. Please stop by, whether you're staying or not, for the event. I do want to make mention that if you are staying, consider bringing chairs or blankets, your own games. Things you should consider leaving at home would be your pets, personal fireworks, alcohol, tobacco, including vapes, and of course weapons of any sort, because it is school property. And again, that will all kick off at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Beautiful. Additional committee commissioner task force reports. Mr. Delorco.
Thank you, Mayor. So we had an opportunity on the Environmental Commission to take a field trip and tour the New Boston facility, MRF, where we contract with to handle our recycling through GFL. That was a very positive, rewarding, and enlightening experience to have a firsthand look at how those materials are processed and all that goes into the sorting and what can and cannot go into our recycling bins. And there, I learned a lot, and I know that there will be an effort moving forward to work with the contacts there at GFL to get some messaging out to the community through establishing relationships with the schools. There was a woman there that was an educator and really gets the front line with the young children and helping them understand. And actually, they police the parents. It's a pretty effective tool. So I was excited about the tour that we took on the Environmental Commission there, and I think Mayor Marr will have some more comments about that. The Code Review Committee now, we recently made that change. We worked diligently on our bylaws as well, and that will be coming forward to council for approval soon. I believe we have unanimous support to adopt the bylaws we considered, and so look forward to that soon.
Very good. Yeah, to piggyback on Mr. Delorco's comments, I had dinner with Linda Tahar and Bruce Westlake, who are members of the Environmental Commission, on Friday. And it was actually serendipitous because I bumped into Terry Branoff, who's one of the co-chairs. We talked at length about the tour that was recently conducted at the New Boston recycling facility. Not all of the members of the Environmental Commission, it's my understanding, Mr. Delorco, were able to attend, but to those, for those who did, they found it very enlightening and thought that there would be a benefit to opening an invitation up to city council members to go on a tour as well, to better understand our recycling service and how the system works. So I have asked Mr. Delorco to take the lead on that and to work with Al Getzman in the city administrator's office to identify a date or maybe 2 dates in the next month or so, and then to send out an invitation, and we can carpool down to the new Boston facility, tour it, maybe go to lunch. But I think that would be a worthwhile endeavor for council to participate in. So please look for a future email from either Mr. Delorco, myself, or Al Getzman in the city manager's office. Very good. Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have a committee or commission report?
Kind of related to planning commission and those, I just wanted to, we haven't met in the last month or so, but just FYI, we've had some projects that are starting, and there will be some road closures that will be occurring over the next 2 weeks, especially on Maple Road. Please pay attention to our Saline government Facebook page when it's up, and our website, just so that you'll notify. There will be a couple days where the road will either be a detour or only a one lane of traffic, whatever. And FYI, people have been asking questions about when is the former merchant farmhouse coming down, and that it's all debated on when the utilities come in and they're able to disconnect that house. So it's not necessarily the developer's problem, it's really the utilities at this time waiting on that. So we're looking forward to that moving forward, and that's it for planning. This week, just FYI, it's our inauguration meeting of the Historical Property Task Force, and we're starting to kick that off on Thursday.
Good, very good. October the 14th will be a busy day because at 4 p.m. the Oakwood Cemetery Task Force and the Oakwood Cemetery Board of Appeals will be meeting, a joint meeting to develop bylaws for the new Oakwood Cemetery Committee. So if you're interested in participating, feel free. I think we'll be in the large conference room at 4. If there are no additional committee reports, commission, committee, or task force reports, are there reports or other announcements? Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh.
I just want to thank the community. We had a great turnout for harvest time this weekend. Thanks to all the volunteers, the donations, Curtis Drake for bringing out a baby calf. We had that in our sheep this year. And so we're hoping that things are starting to get back to a little bit normal. It was an enjoyable time. I think we'll be hoping to have Christmas this year. And also the depot is now open again on Saturdays, and hope to have people stop in. We're in the process of changing some of the exhibits and things around, so please come out and enjoy our activities that we have going on. Thank you.
You know, my apologies. I should have mentioned this at the beginning of tonight's meeting. In fact, I should have asked for a moment of silence, but I don't know what makes me think of this. Perhaps your mentioning of Rentschler Farm, but I do want to acknowledge the passing of a real community icon. He was never a Saline resident, a city of Saline resident, excuse me, but he was an iconic Salinian who was an educator, a mentor, a community volunteer, a leader, and that was Taylor Jacobson, who passed away recently. So on behalf of myself, City Council, the entire city of Saline, I want to extend condolences to the Jacobson family. We will miss Taylor, but he lived a rich and active life and contributed greatly to the Saline community. So just want to state that for the record. Thank you. Mr. Mayor Sulak.
Yes. To piggyback on the harvest time, I want to give a special shout out to all the volunteers. I had the opportunity to attend and see everything that goes into holding this event year after year. I thought it was wonderful, the 2-week-old calf that was about the size of a Great Dane. Some really cool events and good for kids and adults. But I'd also like to make note of that October is National Bullying Prevention Month. I think it's very appropriate with school being in session that, we should encourage everyone to, to be aware, to speak up, that there is no excuse for bullying. It has long-lasting effects on adolescents and adults. So let's please make our community safer and keep our eyes open and be patient and respectful with one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional reports or announcements? The record will reflect there are none. Then at this time, we come to our second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make a comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments from those in attendance this evening? Please approach the podium. You may begin when ready.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilor. My name is Al Hodge. For the record, I am not a citizen of Saline. I live just a half mile outside of Saline. I am, though, quite involved in a number of activities here. I am the treasurer of Saline Rotary and a president-elect. I've also volunteered on a number of items here within the town, the most recently being the Oktoberfest facility. I spent my entire life and career life in the plastics industry. I am a member of the Washington Zero Waste Council, Michigan Recyclers. I'm also on the Ann Arbor Returnable Container Committee, which is putting a program in Ann Arbor at the restaurants where takeout containers are actually brought back and washed and then reused. I am a member of Society of Plastic Engineers Emeritus. I want to tell you this because when I was at Oktoberfest, you were using a number 6 plastic container, which is polystyrene. Only about 1/2 to 1/4% of all polystyrene is actually being recycled. To me, the city here has to put in some guidelines for people holding these type of events as to what type of containers should be used, and also instruct that proper recycling containers be used. There were absolutely no recycling containers at the Oktoberfest. And I saw a number of you there. I was on the beer tap for the Weiss beer, and I saw you, Mayor, and I saw Janet Dillon, and I imagine a number of other people were there. It was a great event, but more than likely, every single one of those polystyrene containers are sitting in a landfill right now. And that's part of an environmental concern that I have. I can only encourage the city to start putting in some guidelines. The only 2 containers that are being recycled with any viability is number 1 plastic, which is polyethylene terephenate, PET, and the second plastic, which is high-density polyethylene. You also have a restaurant down here at the end of town, Bawako, that was just recognized by the Saline Chamber as the number 1 restaurant for takeout, but yet they use polystyrene foam containers, which is even less recycled than solid phase polystyrene, which was used at the, so I mean, there has to be some guidelines. You really need to ban polystyrene foam. It's an environmental hazard. And start to put in some guidelines for proper environmental use. So, and congratulations going to the MRF. Now, I understand a MRF is not a recycling facility. It is the first step in the recycling process. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. We appreciate those comments. And certainly Oktoberfest is a great event, but if we can do more and be better stewards of our local environment and ecosystem, I think we ought to be. Mr. DeLorco, I don't mean to be keep putting things on your plate today, but perhaps you could connect with Mr. Hodge here as the liaison to the Environmental Commission, because I think some guidance and some maybe a subsequent public awareness campaign and education is appropriate and timely.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And appreciate your comments and your patience this evening. Are there any additional comments from those in the audience? The record will reflect there are none. Clerk Royal, I believe we received at least one communique in advance of tonight's meeting.
Yes, sir. This is from Patricia Rabe. Hello, my name is Patricia Rabe. I live at 650 Maple Oaks Court. First, I would like to express my thanks for the crosswalk constructed at Maple Oaks Court to cross Maple Road. It has improved ability to cross the street safely in this area. Tonight, I would like to express my observations about the need to continue to improve pedestrian traffic in the area of Maple Road. It would be great to get sidewalks on the east side of Maple Road from Woodland to Clark. I understand this section of road will be closed on October 15th and 16th for utility work. I know this is probably too short of a time frame to execute a project like this, but just in case this is the area to be excavated, I wanted to point out that sidewalks would be a great addition. There are several housing developments newly built or in the process of being built on this side of Maple. I hope that new developments will put in sidewalks as Maple Oaks did. I would like to see a continuous path on this side since there will be more pedestrians, including students that may be required to walk to schools nearby. My hope that would be that Electronics, the courthouse, and a few houses between Maple Oaks and Maple Cove would get paved. As someone who walks this area frequently, I think the existing sidewalk on the west side is too narrow and in poor repair. And if there was a sidewalk on the east side, I would not have to cross the street to take a walk. Also, I would love to see a more substantial crosswalk somewhere along the stretch with perhaps a button and safety lights. I wonder if a traffic light with a crosswalk at the middle school would help improve traffic flow for middle school students to drop off and pick up. The last piece of my pedestrian improvement plan would include extending the trail that comes out of Brecken Park next to the library all the way to Woodland Drive along the existing train track for bike and pedestrian traffic. Maple Road is a busy road, heavily traveled by cars, bikes, and people walking. More housing will mean more traffic. This, along the school transportation issues, leads me to think that this is a good time to look at the flow and safety of this road, both for motorists and pedestrians. Thank you.
Any additional comments, Clerk Royal? Well, let me respond briefly to the last one from Patricia. Those are excellent comments, and we appreciate those. She is indeed correct. The forthcoming utility work in that vicinity is not enough time to coordinate the installation of additional sidewalks or pathways. However, and I don't recall if I've actually had this conversation with the city manager, but to the broader point of sidewalks and connectivity, I believe it was in the final quarter of 2019, City Council discussed this and had asked your predecessor, Mr. Campbell, to begin the process by communicating in writing to some of our larger property owners in town who did not have sidewalks, i.e. Forcia, which of course is owned by Ford Motor Company. I don't believe those letters, were ever sent, in large part because we started to negotiate at that time with Andalina Farms, and then of course subsequently there was the shutdown, and then of course his imminent departure. But I do think it would be worthwhile, Ms. O'Toole, if perhaps you and I had a conversation or multiple conversations between now and the next council meeting and reported out on this, because I think there are a number of properties that we should make direct contact with and begin the conversation about installation of sidewalks. And perhaps we can share something of a more substantive nature in 2 weeks when City Council reconvenes on the 18th. Sound okay? Yep. Okay, very good. Is there anything further? Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Hodge had said, Mayor, and mentioned that takeout containers may be the perfect start to the proposed bulk purchasing program that we're looking at and moving all of our businesses to a more environmentally sustainable product. And I'd love to see that happen. I think that there was a lot of interest in the bulk purchasing program, and I think this would be a great way to kick it off.
Very good. Yes, I agree. And that was one of the things we had initially talked about, was purchasing items for restaurants, i.e. takeaway materials. And if we can kill two birds with one stone and provide some cost savings to our local businesses and do that in an environmentally friendly way, I think that would be fantastic. So good idea. We'll follow up on that.
And the Environmental Commission would be happy to help out with that in any way we can.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Delorco. If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council tonight, please note our upcoming meetings on the 18th and the 2nd. And the chair would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:26 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Kraus. All those in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.